So chapter number 2, who is the buyer? Why does it make your life miserable? Let's understand him and let's try to find out how can we overcome that deadlock. So in this chapter, I'll unveil who is the buyer. And the first lesson is about the types of buyers that you will find out there. The second one is to find out their commercial intent and strategic thinking, how that links and how that links with you. And the final lesson is how do you work with each type of buyer. So it's important to know them, but then how do you work with each of them? Let's go. Then first lesson, types of buyers. Before you jump in, you have to bear in mind where this purchasing comes from. And the buyers used to be a function that wasn't very well recognized in companies, was a kind of a dead end. When companies didn't know what to do with somebody, they would put it on the purchasing department. And they would be a kind of arrogant, frustrated people, not well equipped. But that was the past. In the meantime, companies evolved, organizations evolved, and they found out that a big important role was played in their purchasing decisions and department. And therefore, buyers became more and more updated, had more and more tools, processes, became more and more challenging, and it became very difficult for sellers to cope with all that transformation. And therefore, sellers also were dragged also to update themselves, to improve their processes, to change the way they were selling and approaching the selling process. And for instance, key account management or account management and all those processes came to tackle these new, very well prepared buyers. So we came from a profession that wasn't well appreciated to a role. The purchasing role nowadays is very well appreciated in companies, and often people move on to senior roles in companies, people that come from purchasing. Okay? It's very important to understand that buyers are very well educated people, very informed and very accurate on what they do. They are not just doing just in the end of their careers. You can find young people or people at the middle of their careers because they have to move on and because it's important to pass through the purchasing department. So these are, therefore, you will find different types of buyers. You will find buyers coming from different backgrounds, and that will represent different challenges. These four are the main ones that you will find out in the market. You have the emotional buyer, you have the calculator, you have the convincer, and you have the technical. Read the characteristics of each other. It's useless that I repeat them here, but on a nutshell, so these are the people that, again, come from other departments and they're going to other roles in their life, and therefore they can come from different areas from the company or from outside and have a very different approach in terms of purchasing, even if their expectations are all to challenge you and to make your life difficult. But you need to know which type are you dealing with to adapt and to respond accordingly, to speak their language. Make yourself familiar with these four types of buyers. You will meet them in the future if you didn't have already met, or maybe you didn't yet labeled per se, but I'm sure that you will identify your buyers in these four groups here. Right? What about the strategic thinking and commercial intent? Of course, as they have different backgrounds, as they have different education, and as they have different personalities, they will tackle their purchasing on a different perspective as well. And it's important for you to understand how they place it, or how can you place them. Of course, for an emotional buyer, the commercial content is very low. It's all about emotions, it's all about him, it's all about blaming you, and strategic thinking isn't there, because it all blocks around the fear of not doing the right thing, the fear of not buying at the right price, the fear of not closing the right contract. So it's very let's say closed. How can you tackle it? We will see that later in another chapter. Okay, so you have the four groups here. The technical buyer, of course, with the much more strategic thinking. He knows what he talks about. He knows what the product is about. He knows about performance and features. But then he has gaps in terms of commercial content. How can he translate that in terms of business? Because very often technical people are very excited about projects and everything, but it doesn't mean that all projects are profitable. And so they have to drop some of their babies along the way. So very high strategic thinking, not so high commercial thinking. That's the problem of the technical buyers. Then you have the calculators. The calculators, they have both. They have very good strategic thinking, and they have very good commercial content. They will challenge you because they use, in general, a calculator. They use a lot of spreadsheets, they use a lot of benchmarks, they use a lot of figures and numbers, a lot of reports, and they are pretty damn well prepared. The convincer needs you. The convincer will try to show that he knows everything, but he doesn't. He is expecting to hear from you so he can balance what he knows. So it's a different species. But so the convincer and the calculator, they have a very high commercial content. Okay, so these are the groups. These are the groups where you can place your buyers. And it's important to know, and we will know afterwards how to tackle each of them. Okay? So, this is how you work with an emotional buyer. Go through it. Try to embed it in your hearts and minds. It's very important. And it's not a surprise that an emotional buyer, you will need time to build up the relation. You need time to make him feel confident and to trust you. So you have to invest in the person behind the purchaser. It will be demanding, but of course it's up to you to see what are the potential gains. If this is a customer that it's small and doesn't have grow ambitions and that don't expect to grow in the next couple of years, so don't waste your energy. Try to focus on some other customer. But if this is a customer with big potential, where you could sell much more, but you're on a deadlock because the buyer is very emotional, it blames on you, puts it on you, and you don't know how to get through it. Read this. Embed this. Try to understand it. Think about what we spoke before. Put yourself on his shoes. Check what are his interests. Build a relation, and you will unlock the potential of the customer. Next one, we have the calculator. The calculator is a very careful person. He knows what he talks about, he knows the business, He knows the market, and therefore come prepared. Come prepared, come with reports, come up with market studies, come up with facts and figures. That's what a calculator needs. If you go there and if you just talk air without no proof of evidence, he will be frustrated. He will not trust you. He will not open up. He will just give you the volumes minimum that he needs. But if you are able to show that what you say is based on facts, what you say it's sustained by studies, etc., then he will start to trust you, he will start to open up, and things will get easier. The calculator. Calculator, facts and figures. Emotional buyer, find out who's the person behind the purchaser. Next one. The convincer. The convincer is somebody that plays it like he knows it all. He doesn't, but he plays it. So come along also with your market knowledge. Come along with your feedback. Come along with your outlook. Feed him. The convincer needs you to give him information so that he internally can show off that he knows a lot. This is the kind of person that shows strength, but in the end has a weakness, and you can close that weakness by feeding him with information, feeding him with data, feeding him with outlook, trends, etc., market news, so that he can internally sell himself. Normally it's a guy that wants to move to another role soon or in the short term. So if you help him, he will help you by buying more volumes. Okay? This is a convincer. Go through this chart. Next one. The technical buyer. The technical buyer normally came from the technical department or quality, and he knows a lot about the background of the product, about the production process, he knows all the technical details. So if you want to deal, or if you have to deal with a technical buyer, you need to talk technical language. And if you're not a technical guy at all, bring along your colleague, your technical colleague, or your technical department, or invite this buyer to go to your technical department or to your company. So they need to talk the same language. Or tell him about new projects that you have ongoing, or about new technologies popping up, or about new trends. So the technical guy is always keen to hear about trends, tendencies, new things, and this is the approach that you need to have with him. Don't come to a technical buyer having an emotional approach or with spreadsheets. Okay? Go through it, embed it. So remember, emotional, convincer, calculator, technical. Those are the four main types, and in order to progress, you need to talk their language. You need to talk their language. That's the key message. So as a wrap up, you have the evolution of the purchasers and the purchasing role coming from a very low valued role to a very important in nowadays, to a very professional, to a very well prepared role. You have the types of buyers, and you have how to tackle and how to work with each of these buyers. The emotional buyer, meet the person behind the purchaser. The calculator, bring along spreadsheets. The technical, bring along all the new technological things or new projects. The convincer, help him out. He wants to move in his role. Fit him. Okay, I hope this makes sense. I hope that you find it interesting. I personally do. I personally, even today, every time that I have a new customer, I really try to map out what kind of person is this? Who is this person? What drives him? How can I build a relation? How can I approach him? How can I enter? And that's really the key, is entering. Put your feet on the door first, go slowly, and then enter. Speak their language. That's key. Okay? Thank you. See you in the next